Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and it's wonderful to be here. It's a good discussion that we have planned around the cloud. Navneet, I believe you've already introduced the panelists. It's a very esteemed panel that we have. Right. So we are going to discuss about the cloud computing. Over the last 18 on months, this requirement of cloud. In fact, this is now is the time when we are actually seeing that it has become more of a need than the relevance. We used to talk about the relevance, the requirements, the added features that a cloud would offer. However, in the last 18 odd months, we have seen the kind of need that has right because of the pandemic and all that. But one interesting thing that has also been witnessed in the last 18 odd months, or maybe now 24 odd months, is that a lot of organizations have shifted to cloud, but have in a way thrown caution to the wind. There has been a kind of a pell-mell shift to the cloud, and in the way a lot of things have been compromised, maybe because of the requirement of the business nature. So we are going to discuss quite a few things about the cloud and the challenges, especially in the manufacturing. Let me first start with Mr. Rajeev. Mr. Rajeev are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right. So, Rajeev ji, whenever we talk about this adoption of cloud, there are certain challenges, especially when it comes to the legacy applications and all. Every organization typically would have a lot of legacy as well as some new applications. What do you think are the challenges with respect to the legacy applications, with respect to the cloud adoption?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Yask, for setting the context. And I can say that the cloud adoption is a very, very relevant topic in today's time because I remember throughout my career of last 34 years, earlier there used to be a question as to why we should shift to cloud. And people were skeptical as to why we should move our application to the cloud. But now the same question is being asked in a different way. Why not to shift to cloud? So that is what the turnaround has happened. Why not shift to the cloud? So coming to the context and to answer your question, over the years, many organizations have been using the legacy applications over the years, and people are used to working on those legacy applications. And this is one part of it. And secondly, also there are many applications which are kind of homegrown and being used by the internal customers for a very long time. So it all depends as to which applications to be shifted to cloud and what is the challenge that is to be faced while shifting to the cloud. So a very insightful thought has to be gone into the minds of the business and also the IT as to from what perspective I should move to the cloud. What will be the challenges in handling those applications if I shift to the cloud? So the selection of applications, which are the possible candidates that needs to be shifted to cloud, has to be very thought over by the business and also by the IT team. Only those applications which require a very kind of high availability and which should be available round the clock without any hesitation. Say, for example, we use every industry nowadays uses the ERP application. So ERP application by default has to be available without any hesitation 24/7. So the business cannot afford the downtime. So this is a must candidate for shifting to the cloud. There are certain applications, for example, there might be some quality related application, or for that matter, there will be some calibration related application, or there will be certain applications like legal applications, which are being used by a certain set of people and not all the internal employees. So, and which also need not be available 24/7 on the cloud or on the IT infrastructure. Such applications need not be given priority for shifting to the cloud. So what I mean to say is a very thoughtful session has to go into the minds of business and also the IT people as to which applications to be shifted to cloud. So this becomes a slightly challenge for the IT folks to decide on which particular applications. And a second thought, according to me, is to go into the maintenance of these applications. Apart from high availability, there is also a consideration that what is that I should, as an IT head, I should invest in terms of time, in terms of infrastructure cost, in terms of maintenance, backup, and the lighting and air conditioning cost. So if at all that is taking a lot of toll on the IT teams in terms of weightage, in terms of time, in terms of skill, and the refresh and everything, such applications should be thought of moving to the cloud, because nowadays on the cloud, the compute power can be grown, can be increased on the flash itself. Gone are the days wherein IT has to place the order, select the vendor, place the order, wait for the lead time, then configure it, then make it ready. So nowadays, this kind of configuration, high availability of configuration is available on the cloud on a very fly. And there is no that way maintenance time or maintenance window that needs to be taken by the internal IT team. So apart from selection of a specific application, a thought has to also go in terms of what is the maintenance that will be required in terms of the parameters that we discussed just now. So these are the considerations, according to me, that should go while thinking of shifting to the cloud. So if you say this will be slightly some challenges before the IT tool for selection of moving to the cloud. That's what my feelings are. Yes.
Right. So I guess this is what all the IT professionals across the globe would be, thinking that objectively we have to decide as to which application has to move to the cloud. However, I would just extend this question and typically talk about the legacy application. Whenever an organization would talk about moving to the cloud, obviously we are looking at various flavors or versions of the
Yes.
options that are given. So, Mr. Vilas, if I may extend the same question to you, typically, would you say that not moving the legacy applications is also an option? Typically when a small organization, so I would not talk about the larger ones which have the option of choosing a small to medium size industry. Cloud is the one which offers the flexibility, especially to the ones which do not have the, I would say, the resource to expand their infra. So do you think the challenges of moving the legacy system is actually there, and one can simply do away with not moving the legacy application to the cloud? Your points, Mr. Vilas.
See, those, I mean, it's a very, very pertinent point. No, it's not just cloud adoption that we are discussing. With the adoption of cloud, we are also talking of adopting certain applications which earlier organizations used to either develop themselves or go for some kind of product locally available, relevant to their business or whatever. As you have suggested correctly, this is very right for the large organizations who have invested heavily into the legacy applications. They may not find it worthwhile moving to the cloud applications or standardized applications, so to say, for some time. But as far as the smaller organizations are concerned, who either have not invested heavily into these legacy applications or wanted to adopt the world-class applications, because ultimately they have earlier, even if they have invested some money into these legacy applications, the amount invested may have not been so significant because they're small. Now, as the organizations want to grow, they have aspirations to grow and be world-class, then they need to implement world-class applications as well. To do that, they don't have that much of investment, and here is where the cloud actually comes handy to them, where the cloud offers applications which are world class, available at much lower cost, and available on cloud, so that you don't need to worry about exposing your systems, you're having a large infra at your location. And like, for example, customer service software or CRM, are these applications are really speaking for smaller organizations. They can't think of these. Now, with host of CRM applications, host of customer service applications, these kind of being applications available, being applicable at a low cost, they can go for these applications at a much lower cost. So I would say that it's not just a question of moving away from legacy, whether it's cost beneficial or not. It is also a question of, as an organization, if I want to grow and be world class, do I want world class applications And if I want those, then naturally, if I have to pay, develop, and all that, that is going to be extremely costly. These cloud applications, which are standardized, which are easily available, which are ready to host, it becomes yet much easier in terms of implementation and also in terms of the cost. And they come with the infrastructure. And you also have the advantage of paying per transaction or paying per user. So you can also decide as to how many users you want to give. So you can start with maybe 5. Then, if you find that as the organization grows, and if you find that this application is really offering you ROI, then you can increase the number of users, you can increase the number of transactions on this. And I think this is a big advantage that the cloud and the applications which are available on cloud, which are standard, world class, offer to the organizations.
Right. I think that is what the organizations would think before starting their journey. Building world-class organizations. I think both you and Mr. Rajeev have very rightly pointed out the objectives have to be absolutely clear in terms of the application, the requirements. What is it that the company or the organization wants, and pay-per-use is something that you mentioned. Again, that's one very good feature that I would say, and this is one of the USPs that they have been advertising. So just extending this conversation, now smaller companies, even larger companies, all sorts of companies have this. They want to come out with the innovations every now and then. However, there is a certain stumbling block in terms of whether it is the infra or the support that is available, even application for that matter, or the software. Do you think so? This question is pointed to Mr. Prasad. Mr. Prasad, are you here in the panel? Right. So, Mr. Prasad, do you think that having cloud, does it really facilitate the innovations that any company is coming out with? 1, 2. Do you think that it is kind of triggering or helping the digitalization and digitization journey of the organizations?
Yes, the question is much relevant to the current era, where everyone requires application delivery at a much faster rate. So, when you say application delivery at a much faster rate, the nuts and bolts of the application, whether my current application is good enough to move to a cloud, that is one, or else you need to build up or application modernization, whether microservices enabled applications are ready to consume those services. So there are certain applications where you find it difficult for directly porting the applications directly onto the cloud. So you go in for a cloud ready application, because the time to implement or design the application is much lower. You outright purchase an application and it's pay-per-use. So there are two advantages. One is you are going in for a time-tested product or solution, which is outright a cloud-ready application, or else you have your own application which you want to make it in such a manner that it is cloud-ready. So there are two variants to it. So it is up to the organization how they look at this, whether they want to move it to a direct bought-in model or develop applications which are cloud ready.
Right. Okay. So I would just take this question again back to Mr. Rajeev. Do you think cloud adoption helps in innovation?
Yes, according to me, yes, it definitely helps in innovation because since last 1.5 years, we all have witnessed the pandemic situation and the never expected situation across the industries. And looking at the positive side of what pandemic has offered to us, pandemic has triggered the real kind of digitalization, I can say, and the real kind of innovation that was required for much years in the industry field. As it has been rightly said that the amount of digitalization was which had gone in the last 10 plus years is less than what is compared to the last 1 year. So last 1 year we have witnessed all the tremendous amount of digitalization, and rightly so with the help of some cartoons or something like that, who has triggered the digitalization in your organization. So that is somewhat relevant, I can say. And the cloud adoption definitely helps to innovate and also to digitalization, because that's the opportunity wherein your organization, especially your IT department, is free and is able to focus on core related activities, core task, I can say. And this I have witnessed, and this I have really implemented in my current organization. And earlier, when digitalization projects were far seen, hardly 25, 30 projects would have been much water passed on the bridge. But we were pushed far more, and we did work on that with a plan and meticulous activity as such. And I'm really happy to tell that when we were foreseeing the 25, 30 projects on digitalization and innovation, we have almost completed 364 digitalization projects in the last 1.5 years. So that itself is an example for which I stand by the statement wherein the cloud adoption helps in digitalization and innovation. And I can say that the amount of digitalization that you can implement in your organization is limitless. The sky is the open. Only thing is that you need a kind of innovative mind, a process-driven approach as to how you can automate the process, how you can reduce the cycle time in each and every process, how you can save on the time and the cost. So if one is able to do that in a very system and process-oriented manner, the digitalization and the innovation can be achieved. So digitalization cannot go on its own. Innovation and digitalization, according to me, will go hand in hand. So the more you innovate, the more you digitalize. That's how the sequence goes, according to me. So I fully agree with the statement that the cloud adoption triggers the way for innovation and triggers the way for digitalization in the current manufacturing scenario. Yes.
Right. I think valid points. Yes, it does. It provides you the right kind of infra on as and when needed, and therefore it does help and facilitates the innovation. Now, all the panelists have so far talked about the objectives, the need, the kind of applications that have to move. One key thing that comes out is that whenever we talk about any kind of adoption or any kind of a journey, irrespective of whether it's actually cloud or some other IT project, it is having the right kind of a strategy. You need to have the right strategy, and that is even more pertinent, especially when we're talking about cloud, where everything is going to be in the hands of a typical CSPs and all that. So let me go to Mr. Kaushik now. What, according to you, Mr. Kaushik, would be the parameters of the proper cloud or the right cloud strategy, especially for a manufacturing process in which typically you would want to optimize the manufacturing processes, obviously, which has to be aligned with the business goals. So, what would go into formulating it, and who all should be involved in formulating this cloud journey? Do you think it is only typically the IT team, or do you also think that IT has other business teams have to it? Mr. Kaushik, over to you.
Thank you, Yash, and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a great opportunity to be with you, all the panelists, and also the the attendees who are viewing this. I think it's a very valid question. I would first start with that. When you talk of cloud or cloud as a strategy, it is always going to be part of the digital strategy that the organization is driving, and a digital strategy is also very much a part of the organization strategy, without which this alignment will never work. So that's how it's you can take it from top-down approach. Now moving into manufacturing, I will all echo that what whether Rajeev or Vilas or Prasad was talking about is that in the initial years, if you look at 5 years down the line, there was hesitance in terms of moving to cloud. The first thing that used to come to my mind is the security. How secure I am, and especially when you talk of manufacturing, these are core to any organization. And nobody wants to, take risk in putting that, or that risk of putting that on the cloud. But over the years, we have seen a tremendous shift with Industry 4.0. Every organization is going for this. Made it very much easy for the adoption of clouds, because cloud has a lot of things to offer. If you see whether the way you want to compute today, whether it's a platform-based service or a software as a service or even as an infrastructure as a service, you have the varieties to choose from. Even you can opt whether you want to be on private, hybrid, or whether you want to be on public. So this kind of the entire, if you see the buffet that the cloud offers, makes it easy to adopt. And with the kind of everyone, whether with the chair that I sit on, it's very much challenging in today's world with the cost called cost. I will put it in quotes because everybody has to go through that. And what could be a better answer to that other than cloud or the adoption of cloud? I can tell you that over the years, we as an organization are driving very fast with Industry 4.0. We have our own program, being an European organization. And the adoption is also, I will say that it's not uniform. So everyone didn't go for 4.0 just like a blink of a light. It's happening. It's happening based on the needs, based on the opportunity, based on the business case. Because cloud adoption, if you move from a legacy to a future scenario, there is investment. It doesn't come free. Might be in long run, the operational cost is very low, but there are some investment in terms of the change that needs to happen. Whether you switch from a legacy application to or a native application to a more futuristic cloud-based SaaS application, still there the ROIs are very important to achieve. And all I will say that what I see the good part is that a digital culture is getting set in every organization. People are started talking about technologies. People are started talking about, are showing their interest in how things gets delivered to them, how this can be made more agile, how this can be made more flexible. I will use the word flexible because that's what I interpret when I talk of cloud. In terms of scalability, in terms of adaptability, in terms of integration. So this all that offers. And that's to me right now, what I see and experiencing in my areas of work is a tremendous adoption of SaaS-based solutions, even in the manufacturing area, which is now becoming a very much a possible and a very much a need with all the criteria being fulfilled. And that's what I see is going to be the demand for the next few months, few years, is going to take its own course.
Right, I think you mentioned a couple of points, that digital culture has to be there in the organization, which is very valid. I mean, we are now in midst of Industry 4.0, and if just about everyone is talking about all these things. Very quickly, going back to Mr. Vilas, what do you think would be the key parameters for a typical cloud strategy for an organization which is yet to begin their cloud journey?
Okay, I think the cloud strategy, as it happens with IT strategy, has to have business strategy as an input. Okay, because business strategy is one which drives the need for the applications, need for accessibility, etc. So it begins with the business strategy. At the same time, we also need to have the technology landscape in mind, because cloud, as it was existing 5 years back, and as it is existing today, and as it may be existing after 5 years, there is going to be change. The change is in terms of, one, the scale, availability of the scale. Second is the ease of availability of whatever resources that you want. Third is the security and other such aspects around it. The fourth is the new applications availability, and the fifth is the ease of integration and the compatibility that is available today. Okay, so as we go along, which one of these would be more refined, better availability, and that is one. There is a technology part strategy. The third is the existing IT architecture that you have, existing application architecture that you have, has to be considered. So when you mix these three parts, one, the business strategy, second, the technology that is landscape, and your own architecture that is available, and fourth is your own thought process in terms of where do you want to go. as a CIO, we need to take all these factor into consideration and decide how do we want to go now, because there is a lot of wisdom that is with us, which need to be applied, because what appears to be a fancy should not get into the strategy, because in the long run, it will be detrimental. So if you look at 4 years, 5 years back, everybody was talking of cloud, but they were not even understanding the costing of the cloud over a period of 5 to 7 years period. So as we go along, the cost is definitely coming down now, because people have become more intelligent and the cloud service organizations are becoming more efficient. The cost is offset by the ease of availability of applications and our own knowledge about the security. So all these hidden knowledge or the wisdom that we have has to be added to these 3 ingredients that I mentioned about. And the 4th one that I want to talk about is our own people capability and the availability of the capabilities and skills to adopt these cloud things available into organization, whether it is partners, whether it is cloud service providers themselves, or our own people. So when we look at all these 4 people, applying our own wisdom, we need to have we need to work out a cloud strategy. If I have to talk about the key components of the strategy, as I talked about the business, where the business is looking for, the business is looking for more worldwide, expansion and the scale, or it is wanting to do more manufacturing automation. So IoT becomes important thing. Like that, we'll have to look at which area is going to be prominent, and accordingly, my cloud strategy has to address that. Also, as I talked about the people availability, so if I have to talk about the cloud, then do I have in high cost legacy old infra skills in the organizations? Do I need to talk about probably modernizing them, retraining them, or whatever? So all these need to get into the cloud strategy.
Right. I think both you and Mr. Kaushik have just, summed it up, the requirements, especially for our cloud strategy. But very interesting thing that you mentioned, both of you, in fact, we talked about the costing part. This is interesting. Not a lot of IT professionals would really start their discussion on cloud with costing as one of the important factors. Costing is something that is perceived to be lower when we talk about a typical cloud adoption. Now, we'll continue on this, and I would want Prasad to come in and later Mr. Kaushik on this costing part itself. In fact, whenever there's a migration happen, it has to be centered around some kind of a downtime and all that. All of this adds up to the cost. It has been mentioned by Mr. Kaushik and Mr. Vilas also, and I believe this resonates with all the IT people that there is a certain costing part, there is a certain ROI requirement which would be a part of the business strategy. So, Mr. Prasad, this question is to you. How do you plan the transition to the cloud? How do you align it with the downtime? And do you think that it has to be aligned to it, or these are parallel activities?
Yes. See, downtime, specific to downtime, one cannot judge whether downtime is the only criteria for moving into cloud. The total estimation needs to be done not only for the downtime, but the application availability, the ease of users operating, what is the time spent, the total time and estimate analysis. Whether I want this to be on premise, what is the total cost if I run on premise, what is the total cost if I run it on cloud, and then you need to decide whether what is my take on it, what is the security investment that I need to do if it is on premise, what is the security investment if I need to put it on cloud. A complete holistic view of the solution. Only then downtime is just one factor. The on-site also, on-premise also, you have downtime. In cloud also, when you have application upgrades or when you have migrations, you might have downtimes there also. Outages for a cloud is just 1%. But when you have your cloud requirement is your on-premise requirement. It's not, cloud is just a platform which provides an application as a service or a infrastructure as a service. But the underlying factors, the data, the user, the use of those applications are within your control. So you need to decide what are those points which would make a deciding factor whether it is to be on-premise or on the cloud.
Right, Mr. Prasad. So I would take this question to Mr. Kaushik also. Do you think, Mr. Kaushik, that transition to the cloud, does it need to be centered or aligned around the downtime, or these are totally parallel activities? And I mean, obviously, and to the earlier part that you had mentioned, the costing. Do you really think that the downtime or the transition period is also factored in when we talk about the costing of the cloud?
Yes, I'm having some sound problem over here. Some drilling is going on, so please bear me for some time. Okay, I think I'm audible now. So can you please repeat the question? So there was too much noise.
Right. No worry. So we are talking about the movement or transition to the cloud, and you had earlier mentioned that costing is also one of the factors. Mr. Prasad just mentioned that downtime is irrespective of the medium. However, what about the transition period? There is. Do you really plan your transition around the downtime, or these are parallel activities which can be done simultaneously? One, two. When you talk about the costing, do you also factor in the the opportunity lost time when this transition happens? So these are two questions based on one.
Yes, I think the way it works, based on the experience that I'm having right now, is it completely depends upon the business requirement. And most of the cases, the business requires it at a very faster pace. So it's tomorrow that is supposed to be, it's not tomorrow, it's yesterday that it is supposed to be made available. So with that kind of, time pressure, I think, most of the cases will be, we do it through adoption of POCs. We do not go for directly, introducing an application without being, tested well in our environment. And that is the approach that we follow very stringently. When we do a pilot, we do it very fast. We do it in a very defined manner so that it closes off very early without very little cost. So that cost doesn't go, unrealized. And in most of the cases, once the pilot is through, it's then we plan it out with the stakeholders. Whenever we do, what I have experienced is that taking business as a partner always helped in gaining that acceleration in digitalization. So that's what helps us whenever we walk through any kind of such solutions, bring business along with us. We are also driving something which we call as digital citizens, where we do not say that digitalization is only for IT or the legacy IT or the digital services team. It is for everyone, and we have now all low code, no code tools or platforms which are available, which we actively teach our stakeholders, our internal employees to adapt and to work with them, so that by using this we can deliver solutions, applications, workflows, you name it, at a very fast pace. So that's how we keep it lean. That's how we keep it agile.
I think the key is what you mentioned, taking business as a partner and going along with it. That's very vital and important for success of any of the IT projects. Now, coming, all of the panelists have talked about or touched upon some of the challenges. Last talked about the people part. Technology is obviously there. There is a mix of technology. We look at these various flavors of cloud. And there's a hybrid cloud model, multi-models. So many of these challenges are there. So I would want to put this question to everyone. I'll start with Mr. Rajeev. What do you think are the challenges, especially, now we are seeing a lot of control being exercised by the respective governments of the countries, whether it is data residency part or the data security, statutory compliances. I mean, this is in addition to the typical challenges that one would have in terms of the applications and all that. So, Mr. Rajeev, what according to you are the challenges that you feel are around the cloud adoption? And this question would be for all the panelists. We would go serially. Starting with you, Mr. Rajeev.
Yeah, thanks once again. A very good question, according to me. And we, as the IT leaders, having experience of more than 20 plus years, I can say that we are working for most of the organizations which are having multi-geographical presence. So not only in India, but some other countries also. So we all have that kind of multinational MNC exposure. So we are well versed about the topic that you said just now about the data security, data residency, and the legal parameters that are involved. So this, although it is a slight challenge according to me, but one has to go by the law of the ground. So if I have a presence in, say, for example, Germany, if I have a presence in Italy, if I have a presence in some other country, so then one has to go by the law of the country in which the people are working. So depending on the requirement of that country, the data residency, data amount of years of data to be kept has to be taken into consideration. So in this case, when I used to work for earlier organization, we had a similar challenge as such. So since the manufacturing process is in, for example, India, we were told that the primary server has to be in India so that whenever required, if at all any government authorities want to see the data which you are generating, if they have to cross check, the data is readily available. So similarly, if the country rules and regulations ask you to maintain the data locally, then one has to follow that law of the country as such. But these rules of the country are not that stringent according to me. Sometimes the specific rules say that whenever required, the data should be provided for ease of access, and that should be given to the government authorities. In that case, there is no binding that the primary server has to be kept in that country. Say, for example, if the maximum number of users are in a particular country, for example, India, then the primary server can reside in India as such. And number of users are less in other countries, then the replication or over the cloud, the data can be accessed. So to cut the long story short, according to me, the rules of the land needs to be followed, and one has to go by it. And it is not a challenge according to me because of the cloud environment. The data can be accessed from anywhere, sitting at any location, and the ease of access is there. So yes, those are my views on the legal and the compliance related topic.
Right, moving ahead, I think this is actually quite important for all the organizations to understand that the law of the land has to be necessarily followed. I mean, this is not an optional thing, right? This is really important. So, Mr. Kaushik, your views on the challenges, people versus technology. What do you think? We've heard a lot of views on the people part also. I mean, I would be coming to Mr. Vilas. He mentioned that a couple of times. So, Mr. Kaushik, your views on the challenges that you think around the cloud adoption.
So thanks, Rajeev, for making it easy for me, because you just highlighted the first crucial part, which is security, and I do echo the same. That's something that's always a concern. But one of the things that is very common, I think everybody wants to do digitalization. Every business unit wants to do digitalization, and how it lands up is basically we have to do blockchain. Okay, blockchain. Okay, what do you want to do with blockchain? So what I mean to say is that it's always everything, whether it's you want to digitalize, whether you want to put it on the cloud, it needs to be challenged. It needs to be, the business case needs to be evaluated. That's the first part. Second part is that choosing the right partner. It's very important, because everybody is going to come and say that we will make the best out of it, we will shine like a star on the sky. But you need to be very careful when you choose a partner, when you choose a service provider. Sometimes if you don't do it correctly, you might land up with a bad marriage, and which nobody wants to do these days. So everybody wants to avoid that. So that's the second thing. And the third part is that you need to have a tap on the cost with once the project is all set, so that things are monitored, things are delivered as per expectation, and it's as per desire. So these are the three things that comes quickly to my mind when I think about the challenges. Other things in terms of knowing the technology, it will be always an ongoing thing because it's changing so fast in today's world. Keeping up with it is a really challenging part.
Right, very crisp and to the point, need to be challenged. I like this, you need to challenge the questions or the requests that have come. That's very important. In fact, if all the IT professionals do start doing this diligently, then a lot of the problems that are faced later on would be killed in the bud itself. Then you also mentioned about the right partners. I think this is an absolutely important thing. A cloud journey is incomplete without, or would not be possible without having the right partner. And costing, yes, keeping a tab on the costing. And I think these probably would summarize it the best. I would want Vilas to add on to these things. And security has already been pointed out by Mr. Rajeev and the structure review comment. Anything that comes to your mind, Mr. Vilas?
Oh, nothing. I think we don't have challenges with respect to compliance because we don't really collect so much of personal data, and we are not into that space. However, since we are operating into multi geographies, we on our own need to be GDPR compliant, and hence our systems need to be GDPR compliant. Hence our cloud partner, we need to be having that as a part of our probably contract or whatever, we work out with that vendor. And the security, of course, everybody talked about, and it's very, very important. And we overlook that. We assume that cloud means secure because it is coming from Microsoft or IBM and all. It doesn't need to be that way. It's ultimately, your own baby will have to handle it properly. But one need to be very much wary about the cost, because there's so many costs that are hidden. So what you get when you get a cloud is probably a TV, or so if you want remote, so TV is going to come with 10,000 bucks, but if you want remote, then you'll have to pay 2,000 rupees. And if you want some additional program on that, software on that, so you need to pay this much more. So like that, if there are anything, you need to really define your end goal, what do you want to achieve, what do you want to have at the end product, and what the partner is offering. And if you add on everything, even consider that you don't need now, but you may need later. Consider that. And if you are looking at some 3-year period, look at 5-year and 7-year period, and look at the cost. And it is really going to be a eye-opening thing for you that will end up paying so much. So you need to really work out that cost much better.
I think that is important. Costing is something important, and obviously buying a TV with the remote is important. One needs to know that the remote has to be a part of that. That's a very good analogy that you've given. Okay, so I guess Mr. Prasad has left. Is that correct, Navneet? Is he still there as part of the panel? I do not see him. Okay, I think we have come to the end. There are a couple of questions from the attendees. Let me just take the first one. Okay, I mean, this is open to the panel, whoever wants to take it. The amount of data that organizations collect has grown tremendously over the last decade. With this comes increasing challenge of organizations moving to cloud platforms in a way that they store, access, and govern data effectively. How far the data democratization is needed to handle the insurmountable amount of data? This question is to anyone whomsoever wants to answer this. Yeah, Mr. Vilas, please go ahead.
I will answer specific to the data governance and data democracy. I have worked upon this project recently. Okay. See, I think, as the cloud applications become available, and we have our own legacy application, and we have the so-called Excel and Word and all. So when you are looking at so much of data, which is within the organization, you may know, and you also are aware to some extent, and you may put some systems into place, but what sits on the cloud and with the application, see, the data democratization happens later. First, the application democratization happens, because if you don't use applications to the user, then there is no data generated. So you give the application to them saying, okay, you want the quality control software, you take this. You want the calibration software, you take this. You want CRM, you take this. You want customer service, you want IT help desk, you want that. So you give all those applications, and you are creating the data islands. So there has to be a proper data strategy. So what we have internally is that we have one single person responsible for taking decision on all the applications. So when that happens, of course, he has to engage with the users, he has to engage with the businesses, but ultimately he's the one who is going to decide. So he has the ability to understand, if I'm giving this application, then how it is going to get integrated with my ERP, how it is going to get integrated with my CRM, where is the data going to reside, how do I collect data, what do I do with the data, what is going to be in my data lake, because we have created data lake. So whether it is going to into data lake or not, who takes the backup, all these questions need to be part of my data governance, strategy, so that it becomes answered before you even go upon and embrace an application. Only when you get an application, then you start generating the data. So application democratization in a way leads to data democratization, because now the data is available. So now you can talk about who will access, how they will access and all. So to address that question in a more standardized and uniform manner, we have created a data lake. So ultimately our strategy is to have a single data lake which is answering the report requirements, the data requirements of all the users, rather than users looking for each application for the reports and the data.
And I guess this answers the question. This is important for the, I believe the person who had asked that. It's a very valid point that you pointed out, Mr. Vilas, about the application. Much before we start thinking about the data, it is the application that has to be thought about. Very quickly, moving on to the next question: what should be the strategy to move loads between two different public clouds? We're talking about, we touched upon the hybrid and now a multi-cloud environment. I mean, I was just not limited to just multi-cloud, hybrid and a multi-cloud environment. So what should be the strategy to move loads? Any takers for that question?
Let me take that. Yes. So I think that will be completely depending upon the organization strategy and the compliance that the organization has to fulfill for the countries that they will operate out of. That will govern that. And also in terms of the digital culture or the scale of digitalization that the organization is driving, that will drive the choosing which cloud form they want to adopt and for what.
I think this is very important. Compliance is one of the things which a lot of organizations are very particular about, and therefore they tend to have multi-cloud environment wherein just in case there is some issue with one of the CSPs, the other one is available straight away. That's one important. So that's a part of the. I hope this answered the question. This list, the last question that we have. By Mr. ACG Mathur, and he is asking what should be the strategy to move. I think this is the same question. What should be the strategy to move load between two different clouds? This was asked by ACG Mathur. I just hope that this has been answered. And with this, I think we have come to the end. There are no more questions. It's been a wonderful discussion. Navneet, if there are any other questions, you can give it to us. I think we have another 2-3 minutes. Max?
Yes, Mr. Yask, I've shared the question in the chat box, chat window.
I think that I have already covered. So I think we have taken all the questions. It's been a wonderful discussion, good insights. Mr. Rajeev, Mr. Kaushik, Mr. Vilas, Mr. Prasad, unfortunately, I think had to leave in between. So thank you all. Thank you everyone for joining.